All right, so I'm going to walk you through the story brand framework. So, what is this for? It's to clarify your message so that customers will engage. Without a clear message, your customers will ignore you. When you clarify your message using this framework, it will lead to increased sales and revenue. Now, this was pioneered and created by a man named Donald Miller. He wrote the book called Building a Story Brand, and that's where this framework comes from. So, pretty websites don't sell things, words do. Right? It's the words that convince someone, that lead someone to want to make a purchase. And so your message needs to be very clear and straightforward. And the human brain is drawn towards clarity and repelled away from confusion. It literally burns more calories and people tune you out once you start to confuse them. So that's an important thing to remember. Is your message easy to say and simple, relevant, and repeatable? Can your team repeat it with conviction if you have a team, right? These are two key distinctions that you need to pay attention to when it comes to your message. The main focus of your brand message must, absolutely must be how your offer helps them to survive or to thrive in whatever it is that you do, whatever they're purchasing from you. If it's in their health and fitness, how are you going to help them to survive or thrive in that aspect? If you do marketing, how are you going to help them to thrive with their business, survive or thrive? This is very, very important. A lot of marketing really misses it completely because they're not focused on the survival and thriving of their customers and their people. So you have literally 5 seconds, right? In the first 5 seconds of somebody visiting your website or looking at any of your marketing material, the viewer must be able to figure out the following three things. Number one, what do you offer? Number two, how will it make their lives better? And number three, what do they need to do to buy it? Right? Many times, marketing can get you, people understand what you offer, they know how to make their life better, but you don't give them a direct call to action or how do they buy it? What's the next step they need to take? And you can lose a lot of people if you don't add that third part, and it adds to confusion. Now, the two biggest marketing mistakes that brands make are the following. Number one, they are unclear about how you help them to survive or thrive. Remember, I mentioned that before. Um, you have to make it about what's in it for them. How are you going to help them? How are you going to improve their life? How does this affect them? That's what they really care about. And number two is making sure that your offer is not hard to understand with either too much information or it's confusing and it's hard to understand. The moment you confuse someone, you lose them. Um, the brain, like I said, burns calories. And so the moment you start to make the brain work harder, people tune you out. It's just a natural response. And so you have to make sure your message is clear. All right. Stories, they make sense of things. And so stories have been used throughout human history to communicate effectively super complex topics, lessons, and knowledge. It is literally a sense making device and it works. And so, three parts to an effective story when it comes to marketing is you need to define an ambition. Number two, you need to define the challenges and the obstacles to achieving those ambitions, right? The ambition is what does the character want? You have to also define what those obstacles are in the way of them getting what they want. And then number three is you demonstrate a clear path and plan to overcoming those challenges. And if your story can encompass those things, then you have an effective story when it comes to marketing. So let me walk you through the story brand framework really quickly, the different parts. There's 7 different parts, and then we'll go into detail on each one. Right. So number one, there is a character. This character wants and needs something. This character has a problem. Now, this character with the problem then meets a guide. This guide gives them a plan. Then they call them to action. That's going to help them to avoid failure and end in success. And so you have to paint that vision of both what it looks like to fail and what the vision of success looks like. And so let's dive into each one of these in detail, more in detail. All right, so character. The character wants and needs something, right? The moment that somebody interacts with your brand, they see your brand, they're looking at your website or whatever, watching a video or looking at some marketing material, their question in their mind is, can this brand help me to get what I want? That is the question going on in their head. And so every character has a set of desires, right? Needs and wants. And these break down into 7 different main desires, right? So number 1 is to save money, serve resources, to save time, to do something faster, to get more time to do what they want, to build a social network, so to increase their network and their social status. To gain status is the next one. Uh, to make money, so increase their resources, and then there's an innate need to be generous. Human beings have this innate desire to be generous. It increases their chances and their status and lowers conflict. There's many reasons why human beings want to be generous. And then there's the desire for meaning. Those are the 7 different main desires. So your character is going to want one of those. Whatever they want is going to fall into one of those 7 categories. All right. So the character, they want and need something. So understanding your customer, understanding um, who your character is. Now, first of all, I failed to mention that the hero in your story is always going to be your customer, never you. The brand or you are never the hero of the story. You are always the guide in the story, right? You are never the hero. And so the character who wants and needs something, you have to understand what your customer wants and needs. So it's very important to know that. So this character who has wants and needs, they have a problem, right? And so we're going to break this down into the different parts. Number 1, there's a villain. For every story, there's a villain. And so when it comes to marketing and telling a story in this aspect, it's a personified antagonist that causes the hero some serious problems, right? So a villain could be, if you were in the financial planning industry or investment industry, a villain would be high taxes, because it's literally stealing your wealth and taking away your funds for retirement, right? So it's the villain in the process, or in the story. If you sold something that helped people to get organized, a villain could be distractions, right? Distractions are the villain to um, a product that offers organization and efficiency. So defining a villain is very important, because it gives people something to unify against. It gives them, this the the enemy to say of any story, right? The villain. That's why stories without villains are often fall very flat, right? So this is just a dynamic that human beings have understood in storytelling for a very long time. Now, the problem, let's get into the problem. There's 3 levels of problems, right? So number 1, there's an external problem, right? An example of an external problem would be a leaky pipe, or bugs in the kitchen, or an ugly website, right? Those are all external things. Now, the villain is usually responsible for kicking off this external problem, right? So now, almost all businesses are focused on solving external problems. However, people do not purchase things based on external problems. They actually purchase things based on the internal problems. And so this external problem is actually causing a deeper frustration or pain that's caused by this external problem. For example, it could be embarrassment for saying, let's say they have bugs in the kitchen, they're embarrassed to have their friends over because there's bugs. That's the real reason why they're willing to buy an exterminator service, or their wife is really angry because there's bugs in the kitchen. They're embarrassed about it. Um, Also, let's say for the ugly website, right? There's uncertainty is the pain and frustration. And so they're uncertain in their business. They're uncertain where their revenue is going to come from. And so that's really the core reason why they're actually willing to purchase and pay for a better website, because they want more certainty. They believe that this better website is going to get them more certainty. And that's why they're willing to make the purchase. Okay. So that's level 2 of problems. Then level 3 is going to be bigger than them and their problems themselves. You're going to have themes like good versus evil, love wins over hate. There was an example of a pet store that said their philosophical problem that they addressed was pets deserve healthy food too, right? It's saying philosophical can be, and usually is in the realm of something that should be or ought to be. And so that kind of fits in that category. If you can have all 3 of these, you can really make a customer or your audience member feel like they're understood, because you understand their problems. That means you understand them and you may be able to help them with their problem. Okay. So moving forward now, then they meet a guide, right? So the guide is going to be you, the brand, right? Sorry about that. Every hero is looking for a guide, right? Your brand is the Yoda to your Luke. And so there's two things that a guide does. Number one, they show empathy, right? They understand the customer's dilemma and their struggle. They've been there before. They've done that, right? They understand what it is to be and have those dilemmas and those problems that your customer is facing. And so the second part is your guide, you as the brand, you are the guide, you have the authority to help them, right? Can you help me with my problem is the question that they're asking. And so, for example, if you're a personal trainer and somebody's looking to hire you and you're 400 pounds, right? And they want to be, in the best shape of their lives, and they don't feel that 400 pounds is in good shape. They're not going to believe that you can help them. So you're not showing authority that you can actually help them to get what they want, right? So that's the example there. So after they meet the guide, this guide gives them a plan, right? Now this plan, uh, you create clarity with a simple to follow plan, right? You need to break it down into very simple to follow steps. So there's process plan, which is, 1, 2, 3. Step one, do this. Step two, do that. Step three, get the result, right? So for example, book a call, discover a solution, and then watch your revenue grow, right? That would be an example of a process plan. You need to make sure that this is very highly visible for people so they understand the next steps. What do I need to do first? Then what am I doing? And then what am I going to get, right? You don't want to go more than 6 steps. I prefer, and I always nudge people and coach people to do 3 steps or that, 3 or 4 max. You can go a little more, but if you have something that's more complicated and takes more steps, it's better to break it into phases and then still simplify it down to 3 steps, right? So it's phase one, phase two, phase three. The mind likes to think in smaller numbers like that, and it makes it less friction, less confusion, less calories being burned. They're more engaged. It's easier to remember and retain. People move towards what they can understand and away from what confuses them. Remember. And so this guide, they give them a plan, right? Then that guide calls them to action, right? A very important thing to remember is that customers will not take action unless they're challenged to. In other words, they're not going to do anything until you tell them to do it. That means click here, buy now, do this thing. I want you to do exactly this. You have to spell it out for people, right? So there's two types of calls to action. There's direct call to action and there's transitional call to action. So direct call to action is buy now, call today, book now, right? That's direct call to action. And in that instance, you're basically asking us, if they've never heard of you, you're asking a stranger to marry you, essentially. And if you got everything right, they might say yes. But in the case that they're not ready to buy and they're not ready to get married to you yet, then we have what's called as a transitional call to action. And so you're building a relationship with them, right? We call it an on ramp to an eventual purchase. And so that could be download this free guide, download this free checklist, or do this free trial period, right? That's an on ramp into an eventual purchase. And so they're getting to learn a little bit more about you in a more intentional way, right? And so it's good to use both of those in all of your marketing, right? You have the direct call to action and then a transitional option for those who are not ready to purchase at the time. Okay, so calls them to action. Now, this is going to help them avoid failure, right? So you need to paint the vision of what the negative consequences are that you are helping them to avoid, right? And so what is the cost of not doing business with your brand, right? And so here's some examples, right? For the example of a financial planner, right? It's like not being ready for retirement. You don't do something about this now, you're not going to be ready for retirement. That is a failure that they want to avoid, that you're going to help them to avoid. If you're running a kids camp service, um, you know, if you don't, follow this plan, then your kids are going to have a boring summer, right? You don't want that for your kids. If you're going to a car dealership, you don't follow this plan or go with us, then you're going to probably, and maybe you might get stuck with a lemon, right? A car that's not worth it, a car that you got ripped off on. And then if you're running a marketing agency, if you pick just any old agency that doesn't know what they're doing, then you might just waste your money on marketing that doesn't work, right? So you're painting that vision, and this is your plan is helping them to avoid this failure, right? Now, this plan that they got called into action that helps them to avoid failure then ends in success. That's the seventh part. And so you need to tell them how your brand will change their life. People want to be taken somewhere, right? So remember that. Paint a vision of what it looks like. How does it feel? How does it sound? What does it look like? Give them a vivid and specific and clear vision for what success is going to look like for them, how you're going to improve their life. And so, for example, like John F. Kennedy, he said, when he painted a vision of success, he said, we're going to put a man on the moon, right? He didn't say we're going to have an excellent space program. No, he painted a very specific and clear vision for the future. We're going to put a man on the moon. And so you need to do the same thing. You need to be very specific and clear about what result, what does success look like in very specific terms in relation to whatever you do, right? What is the thing that they're trying to do? What are they trying to accomplish? What does success in that aspect mean for them? Okay. So a little bit more of an advanced topic here is the happiest endings, right? Storytellers over thousands of years have figured out the best ways to end stories. So the dominant ways storytellers give a sense of satisfaction and closure to an audience are the following three ways. Number one, they win some sort of power position. So they get the girl, they win the job, they earn the job, they get the career, they make the championship, whatever it is, that power position that they get. It's humans are drawn to status, of achieving that status, right? Number two is to be unified with someone or something that makes them feel whole, right? So maybe your lovers are reunited and they feel whole, or Thor was missing his hammer and then he's reunited with his hammer, right? So that made him feel whole. That made him whole, and so that satisfies the audience who's watching it. And then number three is experience of self-realization that also makes them feel whole. Maybe they were pursuing a goal that they've been going after their whole life, and at the end of the story they realize, like, I don't even need that, or I don't even want that, and they're okay, and they accept themselves. What they really wanted was self-acceptance, and that's a big theme that really satisfies people when they have this self-realization. They reach their potential and they have this internal, like, realization, and it makes them feel whole. So those are the top three happiest endings that you can give to your audience. If you can fit one of these three into your story um, in relation to what your customer wants, then people are going to resonate with it. And it's been tried and true over and over and over again in all kinds of movies and stories. So the eighth part of this is character transformation. So if you can improve the way that your customer sees themselves by offering an aspirational identity to transform into, then you really elevate the value that you give in whatever it is that you do, because you're transforming this person. They're going from this place to another place. So for example, let's say if it's marketing, you don't know what you're doing. It's like from confused and overwhelmed with my marketing to competent and calm and confident in what I'm about to do, or what I need to do next, right? So if you can paint that transition or that transformation and show them and improve the way that they look at themselves, that really adds a lot of value to what you're doing for them. And so that's really going to earn you some goodwill, and they're going to want to engage with you because they believe that what you offer can help take them where they want to go. And so that's in a nutshell the story brand framework. I have two things. I have a template that a Google document template that you can use to fill out, that I'm going to include and share with you with an example so that you can start brainstorming your story brand framework. And then I also have a website, what your website should look like, where things should be specifically when it comes to the story brand framework. But it's important that you start with the full on template, with the story brand framework template, and then you can move over to the website part of it, getting the right words where they need to be. There's specific places that the eyes go over time. Humans have just followed this pattern, and so there's specific places you want certain things to be. And so anyway, again, that is the story brand framework. I hope this was valuable to you. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. This is Meta Mango, and if you would like, you can, once you do your framework, your worksheet, then feel free to book a call with us at metamango.io, and I'd be happy to go through it with you. Thanks, and have a great day.